Hey, welcome back to the channel. As always, this is Aesthetic Control. I'm Reed, and today I want to do something a little different. I want to start a new series called Keep, Sell, or Regret, in which I talk about old cameras I used to have, show some of the work I made with them, talk about what I think the camera was good for, if I kept it, if I sold it, and if I did sell it, if I regret it, and if I'd buy it again. To kick things off, I wanted to talk about not a Nikon FM2, but imagine instead that this was a little bit heavier. This part could come off for some reason, and it was made out of maybe a little less plastic. Talking today about the Nikon F3, which was my first foray into getting into serious 35mm photography. I also want to talk about the Nikon F4 and F5, which the F3 created a pipeline to drive me to those cameras. I use them extensively, except for the F4, but we'll get to that. Imagine, if you will, the year is 2010, I think. Film cameras are just being given away, sold for dirt cheap. You could just pick up an incredibly good classic camera for next to nothing. I think I bought my F3 with like a pretty decent 50 lens for like a couple $100 at a camera store outside of Boston. At the time, film cameras, they weren't what they are today, and they definitely weren't what they were back in the heyday. So the F3, I ended up there because I had been shooting with a Holga off and on through college, just having fun, shooting medium format film, trying out film, just something kind of different. And I was getting very bored of shooting digital photos at the time, doing a lot of show photography. And digital just wasn't satisfying anymore. I wanted to do something a little different, so I started shooting film in my day-to-day, just as a fun thing to document learning how to develop black and white film on my own. And ended up with the F3, and it slowly became my take everywhere camera. I started shooting shows with it. I could use some of my digital Nikon lenses. I had a D90 at the time. My thoughts on the F3 were, it was incredible. I mean, it is an incredible camera. Those cameras went across the world as photojournalist cameras into muck and mire and war zones. What I ended up doing with mine is like I said, it became the everyday carry camera. I was photographing my friends. I was going out to, shows in Boston, parties, and hanging out with people. So yeah, it just became the thing that drove me to start making sort of, diaristic photography, photographing daily life, photographing my friends, photographing shows on film. I shot a couple of weddings. And the F3 is what kicked that all off. Having a really well-built, really capable film camera that was fairly small, fairly unobtrusive, I think that's what set me on the path to eventually ending up shooting Leica, because it's basically the same thing, and that's, secret cheat code. Buy an F3 and a small lens, and you have essentially the same thing as a Leica body with a good lens. I ended up where I'm at because rangefinder just works better for my brain. That's where we are. But the F3, it worked so well, and it was so appealing that I wanted something a little bit more capable to both shoot shows. I was shooting more weddings, as I said, and that is how I ended up picking up an F5. The Nikon F5, which I think is Nikon's penultimate film camera, followed by the F6, and I think they got out of the high-end film SLR game. That's a crazy camera. It does so much. It's essentially a proto-digital camera. It has so many of the same bells and whistles that you would find on a high-end digital camera. Autofocus, super fast, frames per second. It's what pros use to photograph sports and racing and all that crazy stuff in the late 90s, I think is when that camera's from. But it could do all of that, but it didn't satisfy me the same way that the manual SLR, but a manual camera where it's you and the camera, and you're synced in, and you're working, and you're making work, sort of reacting to the situation. The F5 I found was great for weddings. It was great for like hectic situations and shows, but on a day-to-day, it was too big. It was pretty loud, and it took up so much space, both in the camera bag and sort of a lot of air in the room, so to speak, because it looks like a giant digital camera. So that I pretty much only used to shoot shows. And once I had been like booking a few weddings, I wanted a backup camera to match, not the speed and the capability of the F5, but I wanted something that was a little bit more advanced than the F3, that could do autofocus, that could do automatic, all the auto shit. So I ended up picking up an F4. Now the F4 is, I found to be like a sort of bizarro middle ground between like a sort of a lot of manual stuff on the F3 and the sort of automatic everything of the F5, but in this weird 80s no man's land of like really cool looking design, but it felt like it was maybe designed by somebody that had never picked up a camera before. It didn't feel good to shoot, is what I found. So it was relegated to being a backup, and then eventually I just didn't really use it, and I sold it along with some of the other stuff I had at the time. So that is my experience with the Nikon F series, F3, F4, and F5. So let's get to the verdict. So to maybe close up, who are these cameras for? I think the F5 is a fantastic camera if you want as close to a digital camera everything as you can get while still shooting film. It's a huge thing. It eats up batteries, but it does a fantastic job as a do everything monster camera. I think the F4 is great if you want a weird looking camera that people will like come up to you and want to talk about. It definitely isn't up to the same level as the F5, and even though it looks cool, it's kind of fiddly, kind of janky, and I never really connected with it the same way that I did with like the F3. So the F3, and again, imagine that this is an F3, not an FM2. This is my wife's FM2. Like, look at the size. How do I take the lens off this thing? There we go. This is not a big camera, but it has a meter. I think that, yeah, the F3 had a meter. It's just like a good all-around, take-everywhere, lightweight camera. And imagine you had like a little 28 millimeter lens on there or something. This is a great system to get into as if you're new to film, or if you just want like a small, take-everywhere, fun camera that will still turn a few heads and get people, interested in talking to you. But it's a great size. It's a Nikon. It's made to last. And they've been through a lot already, so it can probably take as much as you can throw at it. That being said, the reason I don't have an F3 anymore is I ended up picking up a Leica and just didn't use it anymore, but I sold it to a friend for like $100. 2 days later, he comes to me and is like, "Hey man, the camera broke. The film winder on my F3, just like, I don't know if this is user error on his part. It was an old camera, but had just like broken it, not snapped off. It like this whole housing had just come apart." So again, I don't know what the situation was, but RIP that camera. Yeah. So keep, sell, or regret. I wish I had the F3 still, if only because it was like the first major film camera that I'd picked up and really started like a journey of learning on. But I don't regret selling it, and I probably won't pick up another one, even at a good price. I just don't have the desire to use them. I don't really like how the SLR focusing operates. My brain has fully switched over to rangefinder. That being said, if somebody were to say, "Hey, here's an F3, have fun," I wouldn't turn it down. They're great cameras, solid piece of kit. You'll have a great time with it. The F4, I would pass completely. I don't regret selling it. It's a cool thing to look at, but I never liked using it, so I didn't keep it. And the F5, I definitely don't regret selling it. Again, I shot so much on it, it would have been cool to still have that piece of personal history, but I wasn't using it. I'd switched over, like I said, so it was just taking up space, and those still can get a good price. I think it's been probably close to 10 years since I sold mine. But overall, the Nikon F system, and I can't speak for anything other than the 3, 4, and 5, are great cameras. Great starter cameras, great cameras to learn on, great cameras to use and like master your craft. So yeah, thanks for joining me on this new series of talking about old cameras and looking at old work. I think that reviewing your archive and thinking about what you've shot and sort of how you've shot it is a great way to keep learning in photography and keep pushing your photographic skills, because you can't get out every day and make new work. You'll end up just like with a crazy backlog that you'll never have a chance to review and look at. So I think this new series will be fun, taking a look at a bunch of the film cameras I have churned and burned over the past almost 20 years of messing around with film cameras. Hope you've enjoyed some of these old pictures. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.